All right. Okay, so let's get started after I pull my notes back up. All right, so this session was proposed to talk about, actually, obviously, HA with Cinder. It's one of the things that we've been trying to focus on for a while in our development, and it keeps kind of getting pushed down the road. Get a little feel for the room. How many operators do we have? Great. Okay. Any developers? Okay. Like back-end vendor development? No? Okay. So good. Is anybody currently using HA Cinder or Cinder in an HA environment? Okay.
So Triple O is deploying it active passive.
Active passive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on smart control.
Anybody trying active active? one tentative hand.
That's why we're here.
Okay.
Say yes.
So I guess that's my first question is, this is something that we've assumed that we need to focus on. Is it a function that everybody is looking for? That you want active for API scheduler and volume? Okay. All right. So this is a relevant discussion then. I guess then maybe I'll start with a current status of the world, so you know where we're currently at, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on any, but so obviously the API service works active, no problem. You can run the scheduler active, but you might run into issues. We had a discussion yesterday about Cinder using the placement service, which potentially will resolve that issue through the database so that we would no longer run into a state. The current problem with the scheduler is you can run into situations where you're in the middle of a create or extend or something like that. And if it goes down, when the next one picks up, the database won't have been updated, and your quotas can get mismatched, and your usage information can be out of line depending on at what point in the operation you were doing things failed. So that's the current problem with the scheduler, but we're thinking we may be able to resolve some of that without making things too much more complicated by pulling in the placement service. So we took a to-do out of yesterday's discussion to go back, because we had some of the team that was like, no, we don't want to do that. Unfortunately, the ones who are most vocal about that are not here today. So we're going to take that back, talk about it, and then start working as a cross-project group between Nova and Cinder to start implementing some of those pieces. So I'm hoping that will be a way to not only improve the ability to place your volumes, but also to harden some of our HA environment. We don't have any drivers that are currently marked as supported for active HA configuration. Part of that is because we don't yet have a test suite for them. I mean, each vendor driver is going to have a different set of things that they have to worry about depending on how the driver is set up, how that back end works, as far as being able to say, hey, we can go down in the middle of the operation and be okay. On the way here, I was kind of thinking one of the first steps we need to go with that is probably to start putting a list of, okay, if you go down, we should have a test suite that tests, creates, deletes, what have you, because each driver has different calls for that and is going to handle the failure in that environment differently.
Remember the one of the points of the hardness of testing the HA was because most of the testing problems would only happen in very specific, very tiny time frame limitations.
Right.
So it would be Gorka mentioned about the need to add a framework, a library to inject files in Cinder.
Right.
So you would be able to make how to say failures that would always be reproducible every time. You could just rerun a test, and then you could inject the failure and see if that given situation would happen all the time. So yeah, that was the point where it went for the testing.
Yeah. So, since we've got so many operators in the room, this is great. Why do you guys want HA? What is happening that, or what is not happening that is?
Who wants HA?
Everybody,
In the
like
first place.
half of the room put their hand
I
up.
want low availability.
Well, okay, I realize.
I got a plan. CTL stop.
Yeah, it sounds like a stupid question, but to know the problem we're solving,
Yeah.
we need to take a step back and be
Give
like,
us more
okay,
motivation.
so is it because your hardware is catching fire? Is it because Cinder sucks and constantly crashes? What is it?
I think
One reason is to like have a completely symmetric setup. So the way we run Cinder at the moment is we would have like 3 controllers, and one is special because it runs a special service.
well beyond that also
The volume server, right? So if you had like if it would be like HA and all the controllers look the same, that means it's the management deployment.
Yeah, like I don't want to run pacemaker if I have.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't have anything. So if something breaks on our special server,
Yeah.
I have to go there and fix it basically. Bring the server up or fail the volume server over. If I had 3 and they're all symmetric, I don't care. One goes down and the other one's just
Okay, so
Here's
it's
my question. So for that scenario, active passive would be just fine.
Yeah, this is what we do.
but
Yeah.
for,
You will
They
need
don't
to
wanna
go
run
and fix the
pacemaker.
active.
Yeah,
but
or
for
something
scale
else.
Well,
too.
there's other ways to do active passive with Cinder in particular that doesn't involve pacemaker or things like that if you don't want to. But
But it's more like you have
but
like
just
one
because you
special
don't want to
server.
run it doesn't mean that's not the right answer.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Can I ask why you wouldn't want to run pacemaker?
Because it adds complexity.
So just
So
a,
you
It's
have
an
to have
extra
like
thing.
another
Yeah,
extra
that's it.
thing.
Have you
the
seen
only
the
thing left
complexity
in
that's
OpenStack
forming
that
with
needs
doing the active Cinder?
This
I would take
no,
pacemaker.
this is a very good one. This is a very good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a very good point. I mean, I don't want to have like this. So for us, it's not a big deal.
Right.
And if you like have to have a huge machinery that you add in order to have some like little improvement, let's say, if you call it like this, I'm not sure it's worth adding this complexity.
Cool. We're on the same page.
So we're basically
Okay.
fine. It's just like it'd be easier for me as an operating Cinder that all the controllers look the same. But it's not like I can't like move forward with Cinder without.
I want to come back to something you said in a second, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. For active passive, in a failover type situation, is there a significant difference from a development perspective for all the things you have to consider versus having active? Like if my active node fails in the middle of an operation, whether it's active or active passive, there's still some cleanup that needs to be done,
Right.
right? What's the difference from a development perspective when you guys think about those scenarios?
Well, and we've started addressing some of those at the driver level by, making sure that there's not unnecessary locking going on and keeping that as small as possible. And each of the vendors that wants to support this, and not all of the vendors even have locking that make it an issue, but that's one of the first things we've looked at.
The big challenge with active over active passive is the concurrency and race issues. So it does actually make the problem a little difficult. So there's a lot more that you would have to actually be concerned about and think about and address. And then you start hitting all the places.
Is the concern concurrency and race for scheduling deployment, or is it for actual operation of the
Data path. So the beauty of Cinder, right? So the nice thing is it's actually pretty simple. Once you get the volume attached and it's in use, you're good. There's not unless you're using LVM, right? That's a whole different. That's a single point of failure no matter what. But once you get to that point, none of this is a problem. There's no issue. The thing that is an issue is things like multiple create requests coming in simultaneously.
Yeah, so what we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, but I believe that with the work that we have done in the HA that Gorka did, most of those problems were solved.
Absolutely.
Right?
So just so sorry,
There
just-
are a lot of problems related to the AA running, but those are solved. We only need the driver side, the driver maintainers to do the driver side.
Okay, just for me to understand, right, it's like the HA of the schedule and the HA of the volume service itself. I had understood that the volume service is basically solved by the work that Gorka has been doing. It's just the drivers that have to like declare that they support this, right? So
Well-
no.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So on the driver side, the volume side, actually the volume service itself,
Yes.
that actually has been solved for like 5 years. So most of my customers, what they do is they just they have 2 Cinder volume services and they give it the same host name.
Yeah,
And
we
they have
ran like
API.
this for a couple of years
Yeah.
until we found out that this is actually super dangerous. We never had an issue. We have a couple of thousand volumes. We never had an issue with this. It just worked. The only thing is like if you take something down and bring something else up, and you have to clean up.
Then there's a problem.
And then you have like all kinds of weird states in your.
But if you're careful and you know what you're doing and your users are well-behaved users, so to speak, right? But yeah,
They're
so
naughty users.
So what is it actually we're talking? Then we're talking only about the scheduler now. Or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the scheduler is actually the thing that is tricky, and Gorka has solved most of this, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
John's been very actively testing with RBD just these past few weeks.
yeah, so
I think another thing is I'd like to bring up is scale, especially when we're running Ceph. So the Cinder volume is pretty much just a control plane for Ceph,
Yeah.
and all it's doing is really proxying stuff back and forth.
Yeah.
Running a single instance gets pretty overwhelming.
Okay.
Even doing active passive doesn't really solve the problem. The only way we've worked around it, which is like run 3 independent Cinder volume instances, but it feels a bit wrong that we're managing the same cluster through 3 different Cinder volumes. So you're getting scheduled on Cinder volume A, which is managing the same as Cinder volume B.
so can you back up? You said the system gets overwhelmed.
Yeah, so let's say we have a lot of create requests for Cinder volumes, and Cinder can only create so many volumes at a specific rate. So we can't scale up Cinder volume beyond a certain point because it's a single process.
With the current non-HA.
Well,
But HA doesn't even really solve that particular problem.
yeah, if you're talking scale out versus
Why not?
HA, that's
You can just
So if I can
spin a lot
run
of
3 Cinder
that's-
volume instances, then the Cinder volumes will just listen on RabbitMQ, and each one will pick up a create request. So I'll start being able to scale out my creations across different Cinder volume
Yes, that's all.
instances.
Yeah.
It's
The
there's a
verbal
little
locking.
locking, distributed locking
Right.
that happens based on the back end. So I don't know what Ceph is doing for that and what they need to do.
Right.
That's part of the reason why we need testing on the
You
drivers
still have the
before we
logs.
allow it.
I've
So-
seen
so
backends puke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Multiple
so-
create requests.
so what I was
I've
just
not
gonna
seen
say,
Cinder volume.
There's 2 things to that. So this may or may not help you with that, but there's 2 problems that I have with that. Right. The first problem is the fact that this is not designed, at least to my knowledge, and we can ask Gorka and see what he thinks.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, it wasn't designed with the intention of being a scale out feature. It was
Right.
it was a truly HA feature, right? So that's the first thing. The other problem, and the more significant problem in my opinion, is I can rattle off half a dozen Cinder backends right now that I know for a fact, if you start hitting with more than half a dozen or so create requests simultaneously, they fall off. And they've been that way for years. So actually adding more controllers and more parallel paths to do creates
quicker
might
fall
actually
apart.
give you something really that you don't want.
Yeah. Well, because does it look like one instance to skip, or is it 3 different?
So right now,
hosts?
the way that we pretty much worked around it is 3 different Cinder volumes. So if I do service list, it's 3 Cinder volumes.
But then they're
3 different
configured
host
to the
names pointing to the same
pool.
back.
He
Yeah.
uses the same
On
free
set.
HA that we were just talking about.
Okay.
but not with the same hostname.
Oh, use multiple
Yeah.
backends.
Yeah.
Multiple backends.
Right, but they're all pointing to the same pool and Ceph, which makes me feel a little queasy.
No, actually,
Do they point to the same pool?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually fine.
What is it?
And with Ceph actually works really well in that. There's a couple of backends that work really well like that.
Because they have all the locking on the back end side then?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to them, right?
They just
So-
ignore it. They're just images that they don't have to touch, and they just work with
Okay.
what
So when
they're
it goes to Rabbit, it's only going to get issued to one backend.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so the Cinder scheduler takes care of that.
Okay.
Right? So what he's done, which is brilliant, right, is he said, hey, I don't want the overhead and the slowdown that happens in the Cinder volume service while it locks and waits for the volume to create to finish and everything before it services another request.
Okay.
So what he's doing is he's saying, oh, I'm going to run multiple Cinder volume services and have them all point to the same
Okay.
to the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And then you create one volume type that points that has a generic label that points to all of them.
Okay. I gotcha.
They're not really different.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going,
Just virtually different.
yeah.
He's just parallelizing it.
And for
that
us-
works for Ceph, but it may not work
For other
well.
backends where it is tied in directly to it. But that's one of the things I wanted to bring up is different drivers have different, like Cinder Volume does different things depending on what the driver is.
Mhm.
Some of them really proxies into an API and does things, and some of them is, just manages the actual volumes, like a VM or something similar to that.
Right. Which, I mean, there's only so much we can do there because each vendor is different. And their third-party CI is running, so it should be fine.
Define fine.
It's spitting out at least an error every time we do
Fine.
it. So,
Can I ask what state the documentation is in all this stuff?
that is one of the top things that we put coming out of the PTG was, is this documented? And Gorka's like, no. So part of what I'm hoping that will get done during this release is to at least get the documentation caught up with the current state of development. And so that, I think that's obviously important because we don't have it well documented. We do have, I mean, there are a number of blogs and wikis that Gorka put together that are like recommendations and information about it, but none of it is this is the official word on it right now. So yes, that is on our to-do list. And I've got a weekly check-in on this with Gorka, but so far it's been, I'm still busy with other stuff. So, and I wish we had somebody else to help out with it, but we'll see what happens.
I would say that even just adding links to blogs in the documentation is better than nothing. I know
Okay.
it's not like seen as the right way to
That'll
document
get a
stuff.
-2.
Well, well, but I mean, this is going to be in the Cinder tree, right? Not elsewhere. I
Right.
assume
Right.
So we get a -2.
Will it, John?
Not by me. But
I mean, you can try.
Yeah, who's going to -2 that?
Something's better than nothing.
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, and it may be just as simple as me starting a section in our documentation.
Yeah, just
on
copy
HA.
and paste a blog. Yeah, it's smart though.
Yeah.
Take Gorka's
Yeah.
blog and
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can take that as a to-do to start that effort, because maybe if I start something, it will grow more.
Yeah, I mean, even a few sentences saying like, right now you can do active passive with this trick, and active is in this state.
Yeah.
Here are the
Well,
very briefly the pros and cons kind of thing.
And
we should-
even
We
summarizing
should have an
some of it.
official OpenStack-cinder blog, and then users can contribute, developers can contribute, and we can actually have a place for people to actually
That would be very good.
write stuff like this.
That's a good idea. Does the foundation have a place to do like that? We
I
could
think
do
they
that?
have a couple servers.
we may be able to do something on super user and have
Super
it take
user.
some way in Cinder.
I mean, Don't most people just like blog on their own blog and then aggregate to an OpenStack?
I don't know if the aggregator still works.
It does, yeah.
Does it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, it just doesn't work for me. I must have read something.
Yeah, no, it definitely works.
Yeah, that should solve
And on the testing side, or maybe I'm jumping ahead because that's like line 36, but like I'm assuming that most of this needs to, like can't be unit tested. Is that right?
Yeah. What was done so far for testing what Gorka did was to go in the code and put some sleeps, and then he triggered the situations and see that it was really working.
Yeah.
So that's why he proposed to have to work on a fault injection library that will do that automatically. But
yeah, so there's some work going on community wide, or at least there's desire for work to go on community wide on HA testing in general, and I've been trying to herd efforts together and not doing a very good job at the moment. But it's one of the things that I'm hoping will emerge under the umbrella of the self-healing SIG. So there's an initiative for it to build a new testing framework called ERIS, and I can paste the link to. So there's a spec, and there was some mailing list discussion, and like everyone's on board with the idea of basically everyone converging onto a single testing framework for HA stuff, right? So that does fault injection, and it tries to hit all these weird race conditions and so on, and everyone, like, because everyone needs to test this stuff, right? Everyone cares about resilience, everyone needs to make sure that it's working in their setup, and it just doesn't make sense for everybody to be reinventing the same thing. So, you know, we've already got multiple fault injection projects and libraries and stuff. So yeah, there was some mailing list discussion, like I guess around Dublin time frame, and everyone was like, yeah, let's all work together. There's a spec on it, but then EER. So I'll paste. I've put together an Etherpad. There. So there's a bunch of links in that Etherpad, and including to the spec. Yeah, so that's the link on line 26. 27. Oh yeah, and then the user story in the spec. So the idea was to like so we collected a list of like people that are interested, and the idea was to have a kickoff call just to try and like figure out quickly the next steps, and obviously we want it to be a community-wide thing, so you know, want to like mail OpenStack dev and open it up to everybody. So it's like in the very early stages of happening, but it would be great if, you know, Cinder was on board with that.
Yeah. Thanks for making us aware of this.
yeah, sounds very good.
So so one of the ideas about collecting the list of contacts, it's not like to, you know, form some secretive group, but it's just so that we can have every part of OpenStack represented that should be represented. So
It's on the Etherpad, it's not secret.
right. Yeah.
Oh wait.
Well, I haven't really shared the link much until
Exactly.
now, but now it's out in the open. Yeah.
That's gonna help a lot, because that's one of the big issues. Is we
Yeah.
need to figure out a way to actually test it.
Yeah, and like fault injection is kind of like a lot of the challenge of building a testing framework for this is not Cinder specific. Right? I mean, obviously there'll be some things, but like the particular kind of fault you inject. But other than that, it's pretty generic.
Good. Well, it's good to know that that effort's going on as well, because I think I know Gork has felt overwhelmed at trying to figure out how to set up a test framework for this.
Yeah, it's a big job. Yeah, which is why it's so important for everyone to. And by the way, there's just while I'm perhaps a plug for the on Thursday we have a Birds of a Feather session for the self-healing SIG, so I'm hoping that will be discussed there.
Good. What time is that at?
I think it's just after lunch, but I'll post the link to it in the
Good. Let's see. I kind of went over what our current support is. Yeah, we need to document that better. This one's missing. Yep.
Do you want to change that last one and just put it out on step one? Is that
What is OpenStack Climate?
well, that's not
So-
a good sign.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, so planet.openstack.org. It's like, so it's an aggregator, like an RSS feed aggregator thing. So you can, like, if you have a personal blog and you have an OpenStack tag or category on that blog, you can just like submit a Gerrit review to the YAML or whatever it is that points Planet OpenStack at all the different blogs, and then any time you blog about something that's tagged OpenStack, then it will automatically appear on there as well.
It was cool in like 2006.
Yeah, that's not right.
2 years before OpenStack.
Okay. Right, so we can look into that, doing that too. And then pulling in some of the documentation around HA and starting to make that more officially documented under the docsopenstack.org. So I think what I hear in general coming out of this is we do need to be focusing on this still. We do need to document it better. We need to take a look. Were you in the meeting yesterday on the placement service? No. There's a chance that most of the concerns that were raised there before that were addressed, and it may also help us in this active-active setup issue. So we're planning to look at that closer going forward. And then we'll keep in mind the fact that it may or may not impact this support as we make decisions on it. Is there anything else people want to bring up related to this?
Will there be any feedback considered from operators what they think about connecting to another service? As Bimbo said yesterday, also during the session. Because I think it's like, I understand that there's like a new service Python that is very powerful and that can do this, but it adds another dependency into the Cinder service that may make deployment a little bit more tricky. You have to make sure, I don't know, how upgrades will work, what happens if placement goes down, what happens to Cinder, all this additional complexity that I understand is very important for Nova, but for Cinder, the Cinder scheduling, I don't know. I was just thinking what operators think about like doing this, and if this like is taken into account in like when you say like okay, we're like considering this for moving forward.
Well, and that's where we get to the question of complexity versus support. So
Well,
I don't know.
did you guys make a decision yesterday that?
No.
Not
No,
really
no,
a
no.
decision, but a lot of our concerns were answered, and they're not issues like we thought they were. But really, the big remaining one is: do we want to have this other service that's needs?
Yeah.
Or can we come up with a way where we can use it if it's there, and if it's not there, we have a clean way to just look at it.
Is that something that's going to be an option to not run?
If we can do it as an option,
That-
then I think that would be ideal.
Yeah.
I mean, is it going to be? It's not going to be a requirement for nobody to use the placement service.
It is a requirement for Nova.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
So
They already
it only
built
would
it.
affect Cinder standalone.
Yeah.
Right. And that was where we were like, okay, can we do this so that we don't have to add it in for standalone?
Is there any reason why we want it? Does anybody here want it?
Does anyone want one?
Does anybody want a placement service for Cinder?
I mean, off the top of my head, I wonder, does it scale? Is it strongly HA? Are there always any problems with Nova if they're both sharing it?
Yes, no.
Well done.
Well, that
Says the
does all sound
imposing
like
looking
great.
Nova guy, so.
We got a high note.
No, that's what it was designed for.
Yeah.
It was actually proposed to solve the scheduling HA issue.
Yes,
This is the
that
proposal.
was one of the.
Yeah. It sounds like if you guys can rely on an external project to take care of this problem, then everyone's kind of all in on it. That sounds like a positive thing.
Better than reading. Yeah, that's kind of where we landed yesterday.
I mean, if we're dependent upon it and Nova's already dependent upon it, it's not like it's really a new dependency as long as we can tackle the standalone case.
Yeah. Standalone is my only concern.
Yeah.
I have a question. Should we also consider this in the backup service in the same context?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because they are kind of coexisting but using different mechanism for HA.
Like usual, the backup services was
It's
wasn't
just a
considered as
service.
much.
Yeah.
There is an effort we started last release, and working person need to get Cinder backup via scheduler, so it will help with HA.
Would your expectation be that if a backup was in process and the backup service failed, it would backup on the secondary?
That's up.
I would like to have a consistent state, not something that returned okay and then it's not okay half an hour later. That is the problem that I see.
Yeah, that's.
But is that related to the backup server being up or not? Because it might be other problem.
Well, the backend may have their own HA issues, which make also HA is on both sides, right? And the driver needs to know about HA schema on the backend as well and handle it. So yes, there could be a problem on the backend.
As I remember, it was not in Qatar bike and Cinder backup was what is the state of backend. So I'm pretty sure that it's running. It's running Cinder backup service or Cinder backup service is running and could go to the backend and revise it.
We're still on Mikata and
So,
Be hard.
so I'm trying to figure out with the backup service, what's the need there? Because it seems like a backup service should be more, but you want to make sure if there's a failure, it doesn't leave it in an inconsistent state. Is the main thing. And we don't have cleanup for that kind of situation.
I think that basically if you are backup in progress and you have a failure, when you bring the service back, it will be still in progress. You have to cancel that and start again.
cancel.
Yep. Sorry?
Cancel.
Yeah.
Delete.
Yeah. Delete.
Which don't we currently do that for? We do a check on volumes that are deleting when the service comes up and delete them.
This checks.
I mean, do we just need something similar in the backup process?
So I can check if needed in which version we implemented it, but for now, when Cinder backup service is starting up, before he initializes, he verifies that we've got some incomplete backups of the service, and will be all this backup will be deleted.
Oh, you have to start again.
You won't have a consistent state. So you'll know.
How do
You'll
you
know that you don't have a backup.
Yeah.
So you can sleep well at night knowing that.
I assume you don't have it. That's it.
Backup manager will delete all not finished backups and settings, and to delete its state or deletion error. Have to delete them manually in case it's deletion error.
Usually it's handled by some heat stack. Just avoid them. If something fails, then
Okay. Well, it's good though. It sounds like your concern is addressed there. And we should we should maybe also chat with Orca when we can about if there's HA backup considerations, but I would think that's lower priority than the volume service issues. So, okay.
Really, we didn't talk about HA backup service yet because our main goal was to get it scalable.
Right. Scalable is good. That's good first step.
Yeah, HA is the next step.
So, okay, we got 3 minutes left. Anything else people would like to cover on this topic? This has been good discussion.
it's not necessary. Sorry.
I was late, but what's wrong with pacemaker?
It's a thing.
It's an
It's a
extra service to run. It has a non-OpenStack level of complexity to it. It's a non-trivial service to set up and run. It has split frame problems if you don't maintain it. It's something else you have to pay attention to when you take a node down for maintenance.
I guess
How do you feel about it?
It's
I guess my prejudice is something that's been around long enough and taking for granted is part of what we normally get with a living system. I mean, it's not a story package. But if you lived and breathed it and used it in various limitations.
But what if you haven't? But what if you haven't? There's nothing else in OpenStack that requires it anymore, although apparently there's a caveat I'm missing, but I don't use it at all anymore.
Well, is there a technical reason beyond ease of documentation availability? Like, is there? That's what I was wondering.
Right.
It's like,
I mean,
is there
it's
something
not-
fundamentally wrong with it that would-
There's nothing. It's not like a bad way of doing things, but it's an extra thing to take care of. It's an extra external dependence.
You made the comment that you could do active passive in Cinder without pacemaker.
Yeah.
So can you expound upon that a little bit?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, what
He just threw it out there.
If you're running Ceph, you don't need it, really.
No, I think there are ways to do that without pacemaker.
the usual gotcha is that you need fencing for this kind of situation, right?
Right. We wouldn't do it without that.
Well, people try. I mean, yeah, it's that. I mean, that's one of the patterns of behavior that seems to emerge is that like people, they want to avoid the complexity of pacemaker, so they try and get away, like implement something without fencing, and then obviously it fails miserably.
So something that may not fit in this discussion, but I don't know where to address the question. If your backend for Cinder volume and Cinder backup happens to be on the same backend, which is a possible scenario, then
It shouldn't.
well,
I mean,
Definitely an anti.
you may slice the backend and have backup on one slice and the volume on another slice. So you can
don't
do
have a
you
fire
can
flood.
make HA on the backend. So, but if you do that, if you do have that, then backup over volume will have to go through the controller and back to. So you basically copying the images and volumes. Is there any work in progress or standard that allows the backend
We had a discussion about
to
that.
synchronize
Can you
something
do a
on the
snapshot or a
backend?
clone?
Yeah. If it's the same, we can. Yeah, we had a discussion about that in Austin. Guys from Huawei was trying to implement exactly that. And the thing that came firstly was, well, that's not how backups should work.
Yeah.
They should not be in the same storage. And if they are in the same storage, then it's possible to do a quick backup, a rapid cloning or snapshot, something like that. So you don't really need to use the backup service.
Okay. Supposedly you don't have the same storage, but they can talk a more efficient way.
Internally.
Maybe
Be like a
externally, but more
replication.
efficiently than through the.
So
controllers.
there is a mechanism to make that work on a driver basis, right? So the driver, the vendor can set up a driver specifically, a specific backup driver that knows how to talk to their volume.
Yeah, but the question was, is there any standardization going on in this? Because I can understand that specific vendor may implement and sell it.
No,
but
because
is there
there's
any
no standard. There's no standard way to do it.
Okay.
Right.
Has any vendor done that you know of? Written the backup drivers?
Seth,
No.
I didn't see. No.
Huh?
Can Seth do that?
Seth does it.
Okay.
There's ways to do it depending on how you define a backup.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? I mean,
Exactly.
so I could easily provide a solid fire backup driver that just does a clone or a replicate to another solid fire.
As long as the backup and the volume are in the same storage.
Well, it doesn't even have to be the same storage.
It can be another
So
one.
if my storage knows how to do some super fancy way to, that shouldn't be enough.
compressed.
Yeah.
Hoo-ha, whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. So that's why I picked replication as an example, right? So you can replicate.
Yep.
Or what's NetApp have that? What's it called?
SnapMirror. Yeah. SnapMirror flash.
The reason we put the host in the path
Pick a name.
is to support it for the vendors that don't have the fancy back-end support for it, so that we have the broader support. But if they're able to do it in their back-end, then hopefully they would enable that in their driver.
How would, from the user perspective, you trigger that? Because
It should be documented in the vendor's documentation, or it should happen automatically.
From a user's perspective, it would just be a backup, but from an operator's perspective, you have to configure the Cinder backend service to use that back end.
From the user's perspective, it would be a volume type or a backup type of trigger.
Thanks.
Compression. Right.
Cool. We're actually like 3 minutes over. Should we take a brief bio break and then start the multi-attach discussion? Does that sound okay? Okay. Thanks for the great HA discussion. I appreciate it. Grab some coffee, take a break, and we'll meet back up here in a few minutes.
No, only me.